Welcome to South Asian Environment Dialogue. Now we know that the world is going through the crisis called climate change. Series of reports, international reports have come up in recent times. But above all, we recently had another round of climate talks in Bonn. And what has happened in Bonn? The UNFCCC is officially saying that some progress has been made, but they're admitting that a lot to be done. And they're saying that the COP27 later in the year will be a very, very important part where needs to be seen how Paris Agreement will be realized. Now, the activists and the climate experts, non-governmentals are claiming that it basically again an extension of blah, blah, blah. So was born another round of blah, blah, blah that we are going to talk for about half an hour from now. And I have a fascinating kind of group with me, experts with me. I have Sanjay Basist, the Director of Climate Action Network South Asia. Welcome, Sanjay. Fresh from Bonn. Lot of heat out there. I was just telling. Sure. I have with me Abid Sureri Saab. Abid Sureri Saab is the head of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Pakistan, a major player, I would say, in Pakistan's climate change negotiation and dialogue. Welcome, Sureri Saab, into the program. It's such a pleasure to have you again. And I have my very good friend, Mohammed Samsuddaman Bhai Doha Saab, in the program. And he is another very important cog in the wheel. He's also in, I think all three of them were in Bonn and had seen how it transpired. So welcome to the show. And
thank you.
Really looking forward to really know from all of you that how the things transpired in Bonn and where we are going on. So let's start with Sanjay. Sanjay, Bonn. There are two versions. If I can read from the UNFCCC report that I have with me, where UN Climate Change Executive Secretary Patricia Espinosa saying that while much work remains, parties have made progress in several technical areas here in Bonn. Such steps are a key part of negotiations and important to achieve our overall goal. The world is moving closer to an overall shift towards implementation of the Paris Agreement. That's what she's claiming. And she's also saying that major political decisions, notably on finance for loss and damage, need to be taken at COP27. We now need to ensure that COP27 will truly be the place where important promises of the Paris Agreement are turned into reality. How hopeful you are, Sanjay?
Jayanta, I think I will start with the title that you have given to this interaction, which is Bonn blah blah blah. Unfortunately, it was Bonn blah blah blah. Let me share my views about UNFCCC comments about Paris Agreement and how we are getting closer. I don't think we are getting closer. We are going far away from what we have agreed in Paris Agreement. What this whole negotiation is all about, what this Paris Agreement is all about. In Paris Agreement, it was agreed that countries will put more targets on the table by 2023 or by 2025. And as of now, on mitigation. So basically, we need to mitigate. We need to move away from fossil fuel. We are not. Developed countries are still investing in fossil fuel massively. We saw on Rhine River big, ships taking coal from one city to another. That's one example. While in a way, the buck is being passed from the developing countries to stop using fossil fuel by telling ADB, by telling World Bank, by telling all the other financial institutions, do not give loan for fossil fuel, which is great initiative. But what developed countries are instructing their own, these multilateral financial institutions, they are basically defaulting themselves. They are basically using those leftover resources for themselves rather than actually also accelerating energy transition. So that's one. So mitigation, still developed countries are running away. They're passing back on the developing countries. That's a big disappointment. Certainly on that, it was blah, blah, blah. Various excuses. I don't want to get into that. Second was that we need to adapt and build resilience so that we can fight impacts, climate impacts. Now that's again where we are still talking about global goal on adaptation, how it should look like, how many people we can save, but no tangible money on the ground. In fact, there are figures which says that that 100 billion per year is not coming on the table. In fact, that is a confession even developed countries, their own assessment has made.
Sanjay, sorry to interrupt you. I remember that in Glasgow, there was talks from the developed countries that around 2023, this $100 billion are supposed to come on table. So is it still not on that target?
No, I think from 2021 onwards, it should have been 100 billion every year.
Right.
Right. And let me share some figures. For 2029, total almost around 80 billion is being claimed coming on the table, out of which 25% is for adaptation, rest is for mitigation. And there's a big chunk of what we call it, loans also here. So certainly they are defaulting. 2021 figures still need to come. So anyway, but basically there's no money coming on adaptation. Third most important is because of high intensity and extreme event, what is happening is there are permanent losses happening to ecosystems. Now, what kind of response do you need for ecosystems? So we need we need to relocate people, we need to compensate them, we need to provide them alternative livelihoods, and we need money for that. So they are not willing to talk about climate loss and damage finance facility. They are willing to talk about it for next 3 years. But
right.
So if it is, what do you want to talk about it? No finance facility, just we'll continue talking about it. And in a way, and we have seen the phenomena is that climate change is running much faster than our response.
Okay, Sanjay, 3 points you mentioned. I'm sure there are other points which we need to kind of zero in. But let's observe 3 key points you mentioned to start with. So let's take the opinion of first Suredi Saab and then Doha Bhai, that how they feel about it. Suredi Saab, you have been also in the Bonn and the kind of first-hand seen how the discussion is going. To start with, did we have any improvement where Glasgow ended, or we are in the same line as Glasgow? What do you feel about it?
Well, if I have to look at the silver lining was that in Bonn, the loss and damage agenda, that could not be thrown under the carpet. So at least the civil society very actively present there, and the developing countries delegations there, and especially the LCD experts and the delegates from Africa, they were quite vocal in demanding for loss and damage fund facility. They were very vocal in saying that developed world shouldn't recycle and rebrand, relabel what we call in South Asia, nai bottle mein purani sharab. So they said that this old wine cannot be sold in the old medicine. Old wines are actually quite expensive. Old medicine cannot be sold in new bottles. So this ODA, the Overseas Development Assistance, that shouldn't be labeled and branded as one of the commitment from developed world that their contribution towards climate financing. And most importantly, I think while we were living, developed world now it has started to understand that climate change is not blah blah blah. We used to call it, and they used to tell us that all you are saying is you are just creating havoc and you are doing blah blah blah. Now Bonn itself with 37 degrees Celsius, and Frankfurt with 39 degrees Celsius, and Berlin with the similar temperature. I'm not enjoying the heat wave in Europe. I think the people in Europe, their governments, they must act more wiser, so that the people, the innocent people, they can be saved from this climate change. But think of the common households in Europe where they don't have fans, they don't have air conditioners, because they had and never thought of it. And now with the type of heat wave that they are experiencing right from the start of summer. So climate change is not a blah, blah, blah. Climate change is something
real on
we
ground.
have to take concrete actions. And if Europe and developed world is missing in it, they are not only making the people sitting in southern north, the southern global south suffer. They are also making their own people suffer.
So you feel, Suredi Saab, there has been some upward movement with the benchmark of Glasgow?
As I said, that to me, this is in itself an achievement that 6 months down Glasgow and 6 months before Sharm el Sheikh, we were able to recall that loss and damage.
Still on agenda.
Yeah, that needs to be discussed so that it can't be brushed under the carpet.
Great. I'll come to the other points, but as Sanjay pointed out that they want to talk about the loss and damage, but not really putting fund into it. Let's go to Mohammed Samsuddah. He's the Chief Executive of the Center for Participatory Research and Development, Bangladesh. Doha bhai, from Bangladesh point of view, because I know that Bangladesh is one of the major candidates for loss and damage. So does part of India as well, other South Asian countries. What do you feel? How hopeful you are that with still the agenda being there, but are we really pushing it, or are we going to the circles?
Thank you very much. This is a very important question. Not only Bangladesh, if I consider the Climate Vulnerable Forum, because Bangladesh was leading that forum until a month ago. So the entire countries of the Climate Vulnerable Forum was pushing loss and damage agenda very hard. And the center point of loss and damage agenda is financing loss and damage. And earlier we are demanding compensation for loss and damage, but for many political reasons we withdrawn from the word of compensation. But you see, if we track the entire negotiation, all time developed countries, even the text of the negotiation, they qualified and they agreed that loss and damage finance is essentially required, because in many countries, not only Bangladesh, many other countries, they are facing substantial loss and damages due to sudden onset impact. But problem is that when we talk about finances, then we found that developed countries are a kind of transferring their responsibilities of loss and damages to other options, like Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. They try to say that rehabilitation support after disaster, they also a kind of loss and damages. On the other hand, we also found that many countries, particularly in Glasgow, we found that the host country committed some money for loss and damages. And in Bangladesh, some countries like Denmark and also other countries are committing loss and damage fund. But they are bypassing the UNFCCC, structure. They are trying to push this agenda or pull out this agenda from the UNFCCC and providing some money to some countries in the name of loss and damages. So this is again a kind of
So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. So you feel that it's a design in itself, that giving some money to a country for loss and damage and take the agenda, perhaps the force of the agenda away from the UNFCCC discussion?
100%. And this has happened in terms of displacement and migration, because once we had a strong paragraph under Cancun Agreement on displacement and migration, but we lost this because there are many parallel initiatives like Nansen Initiative, platform for disaster displacement. So some parallel initiative has been created, and that initiative has made the argument under the UNFCCC weaker. Again, developed countries are trying to, the demand of loss and damage is very weaker under the UNFCCC, and are trying to put some money out of the UNFCCC process.
So kind of derailing the process.
Derailing the process. But still we are hopeful that many civil society group like CAN International and also other civil society group, NGOs, they're pushing hard this agenda and keeping the agenda alive in the UNFCCC discourse.
But how far that agenda kept alive at the discussion level? Because the civil society is pushing it from outside. But within the four walls of negotiation, how much that matters in real time?
In terms of negotiation, I found that LDC has a very strong position, not only NDC, but also AOCs. Vanuatu also has taken very strong position, and they are going for a kind of litigation for loss and damages. So they are the clear examples of the solid argument of the developing countries and LDCs. But problem is that if the countries like those countries we consider as soft countries like European Union, if they don't support our agenda, then we cannot counter the strong argument of the other developed countries like USA, France. This time,
very important point. I just would like to go to Sanjay here. Sanjay, European Union has always been seeing a group which was supporting the issue of the developing countries to a much larger extent compared to USA and others, Australia and others. But do you feel that kind of European Union has let the developing countries down a bit?
It is, in fact, as Doha Bhai mentioned, this time we have see. So, first of all, just my comment about whether we managed to keep the loss and damage finance facility agenda within the negotiation wall. Yes, because G77 China proposal was submitted by like-minded group. It was supported by Africa Union, and then AOCs came forward and started supporting. Though initially it was interpreted that AOCs is not supporting, but no, they were supporting a different approach of finance facility, but and they wanted a broader approach. And then ILAC and everyone supported. So G77 China, after such a long time, is standing behind a proposal on the table on loss and damage finance facility. So that has been the success of Bonn so far. That's the only success I see of the Bonn so far. And so having said that, European Union this time resisted, talking about loss and damage finance facility. While, as Doha Bhai mentioned, that compensation word is being dropped by Climate Violence Forum or LDCs, so that European Union is comfortable to talk about it.
Exactly.
Right.
But still there was no traction. I do hope that, as Abid Bhai mentioned, that the ongoing heat waves make people more sensitive towards these impacts and make understand what kind of impacts we are talking about and we are suffering on day-to-day basis here. But
we had, Sanjay, series of cyclones or whatever they call it in USA, but that apparently didn't push USA beyond the point. Before I go to Suredi Saab, another quick question, Sanjay, is that away from the loss and damage a bit, that series of AR6 report has turned the situation in a you can't have it worse than that. It's a code red for humanity. They're saying that we are almost a track of no return. So these reports have already on board. These are official IPCC reports. Have you feel, because as per my knowledge and my understanding goes, that one of the report went before Glasgow, but two reports came after Glasgow. So did you find that the reports are kind of triggering any more action within the developed country groups?
So IPCC report talks about 3.6 billion people at risk. That is half of the 50% population, global population is at risk. Keeping that in mind and how much time we have wasted in negotiation, and the result is that only one set of countries are supporting loss and damage finance facility and rest are resisting it. That developed countries are not talking about mitigation. They are trying to pass buck, and there is no climate finance visible. I don't think IPCC report is being taken seriously.
Same to Suredi Saab. Suredi Saab, series of reports. What's the point? IPCC reports are meant to trigger the political personalities, the political executives across the globe for climate action. But apparently they didn't trigger enough. Or what do you feel about it?
Well, one can say that perhaps they didn't trigger enough, but again, I'm a born optimistic. I try to look at things positively. I know that Economist a few months ago, they had their full edition dedicated to climate change, and they had made use of those IPCC report and those expert panel reports. They had translated them in so plain and simple language so that the decision maker and policy makers they could understand it. And the readers of Economist magazine, they are, of course, policy influencers in their respective sphere. If I look at Pakistan, I know, for example, in case of Pakistan, we have this what we call senior management course and national management course, compulsory course for our those administrative service senior bureaucrats who had to promote from grade 21 to 22 or grade 19 to 20. So this climate change and these reports, they have become a regular part of their curriculum, where those very senior officials who would be then permanent secretaries of respective departments, that sensitized on climate change. So I would say that yes, we are not there where we had to be. Glass is still half full. But at least now, no one can negate the importance of science in climate change. Yes, Donald Trump, people like Donald Trump, they do exist in our world, and they can come and they can simply reject whatever has been produced so far. But sane minds, at least they know that science is now backing up whatever the developing countries they have been claiming about the vulnerabilities. Science is backing up the need for action, and the data, especially data analytics. If you look at the frequency and intensity of the extreme weather conditions in any particular year. So again, it's a science that is telling us, if one starts looking at it from 1870 or 1850 onwards.
Right.
So it's very clear, and it is presented from the science.
Fine. I'll come to Sanjay, but before that to Doha Bhai again. Just taking cue from what Sureli Sir has just said, I remember that the Working Group 3 report very clearly said that 31st December 2024 is your deadline, because unless you really start working from 2025 on ground, it will be really getting extremely difficult. So while, yes, might be some changes, but are we chasing the shadow, Doha Bhai?
Yes, linking to the Abid Bhai's point that yes, we don't have any time, and science also made clear remarks.
Very clear.
But we are not listening to the science. We are listening to the market, and we are listening to our national interest. And all the countries
are we also listening to the market?
I'm
not sure. Are we also listening to the market, or are we just listening to the narrow vested interest of some groups, some people around? Market is also not very comfortable in the way climate change is expanding itself.
And developed countries are looking into the market, because when they are talking about, 1.5 degrees centigrade, they're talking about energy transition, and energy transition is entirely market. And also now they are talking about ecosystem-based adaptation, nature conservation, not talking about adaptation and providing finance for adaptation, not talking about loss and damages. So they are just trying to invest their money in the name of energy transition, low carbon development, and also conservation and management. And you see that in Bangladesh, FCDO, British government, they took massive project in relation to energy transition, capacity building, and also ecosystem adaptation. And around 80% of this fund is loan. So this is just investing their idle money, idle capital to the developing countries, climate vulnerable countries, in the name of adaptation and also resilience building. That's all. And also creating new market for the technologies. So I think they're just waiting for the open up their market and marketing scopes, not really looking into the mitigation. Because if they would listen science, they would listen since the third assessment report of the IPCC. Because
very interesting. So
yes,
market defeating mitigation. Market defeating mitigation. Market versus mitigation.
Market versus mitigation, right?
Yes, I think very interestingly put, Doha Bhai. Thank you for that. Sanjay, before I would like to really analyze very quickly with all three of you the Glasgow findings and have we moved on that. But very interestingly is that your take, the 2025 is the deadline, Sanjay. And we are still not really, we are still being kind of blah. So how hopefully, because this COP27 is supposed to be a developing country COP, and lot of hope being pinned on it. So this Bonn is leading to that COP. So how the build up?
Yeah. Well, before I respond to that, I think I would also like to respond on what Abid Bhai said about science being the basis for the action, which I do agree. Every country is using science as a basis. So IPCC reports are not being ignored entirely. The problem is that IPCC report is being used to save their own people and themselves, rather than working towards solutions for global humanity. Exactly. Right. So that's the problem. So equity and climate justice has been thrown out of the window. They are using science to enhance the adaptation efforts at home. Look at the policy changes that is going on. Energy transition, heavy investment to solar and wind without supporting such investments in developing countries. And in a way, they are basically suffocating developing countries with no energy security. And they're using this as an opportunity to be ahead in the game in future. So, and plus, as Dohabai mentioned about debt diplomacy, which developed countries are using. So markets are being put together. I'm sure, and once the energy transition is fully installed in developed countries, after 10, 12 years, they would like to sell those technologies to developing countries and basically make them their customer rather than, working towards a common goal and save everyone together. So that's one. In terms of Bonn as the preparation for Sharm el Sheikh, what do we want in Sharm el Sheikh? It's an Africa COP. One of the most impacted community, highest number of impacted communities are in this continent. What should be the outcome? What is expected from Africa COP? We need higher resilience. We need more money on the table so that people can save themselves. Countries can start investing into the change that is required. And nobody is talking about money. We can talk about we will do this, we will do this, we'll do this. But if there is no money available, nothing can be done. We need energy. Energy. When I say energy, energy means money energy that can drive action on the ground, and that is missing.
Right. So you don't feel that that's on ground. I have water, Sanjay. Suraj, as Sanjay was putting up, it struck me. Suddenly, during COP26, suddenly this net zero, the phrase net zero, completely overwhelmed everything else. And wherever you went to Glasgow, in train station, in roads, everywhere you can see net zero. But I could not see in the statement being given by UN, net zero has been mentioned. It's amazing. 6 months before, net zero was all over. And now there's no net zero anywhere. So aren't these developed countries are consistently using these jargons to play around and blah, blah, blahing rather than doing anything on ground?
Well, those jargons are always used, but my concern with net zero is slightly different. Even if there is a net zero from today, the sufferings that we are made to go through because of the emission that has been historically taken place from industrial era till today, who will be compensating for that? So it's very good, and in theory and in practice, I endorse from tomorrow, from today, right now, there must be a net zero. But while advocating and for the commitments and pledges made under net zero mission, we shouldn't forget that the emission that those countries and the firms and the multinationals, they have already produced. Someone is suffering from those emissions in the developing countries. Someone is suffering from those emissions in LDCs and in Africa. And they are still responsible for climate justice. They cannot actually hide behind these jargons. Or any of the jargon from the common but differentiated responsibility. They cannot hide behind these jargons from climate justice.
I think absolutely. A very quick response on that. Why just on that, because I have about 5-7 minutes left, so I'll go to a different set of questions. But very quickly, this net zero using the jargon, and Suraj sir just talked about that the countries, the big countries, should not take refuge behind these jargons of net zero and kind of don't do enough on the climate justice. Very quickly, Duha sir.
Net zero. I mean, it was a highly talked issue in last COP, and everybody is talking about net zero emission. Theoretically, this is correct. We can talk about net zero, but if we go to the practical, net zero means plus and minus equals zero. So there is addition, there is subtraction.
Right.
But if you continue to add more and more, then you will never achieve net zero. So you will reduce your addition and would enhance your subtraction, like renewable energy and other things. Developed country is not compromising their addition. They're just adding more. And they're pushing developing countries to reduce our emission levels through NDCs and other things. And there is also financial gap. So within that imbalance, theory, imbalance structure, it is not possible to achieve net zero. So theoretically, net zero is correct, but practically achieving net zero is impossible.
Sanjay, moreover, you are even the earliest net zero target, that is the US and UK target is 2050, and then China 2060, India 2070. These are the big players in emission game. when the UN is saying the 2025 is going to be the point when you start working, and then you are setting up an aspirational target in 2050, does it actually make any sense, Shankar?
Janta, the problem with the net zero was that we are talking long term. Nobody's talking today and tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the problem. So it was certainly, deflecting technique not to talk about immediate priorities, but move the goalpost to the later year and do not take responsibility. And then many countries agreeing to that net zero, and that you considered as a success parameter. In fact, the response of net zero in Bonn was...
In fact, Sanjay, I think it's basically a media damage control.
Exactly.
The moment you say US announcing net zero 2050, everything else being kind of pushed behind, and that becomes a big news.
Absolutely.
Same with India, same with China. So it's basically a PR a PR exercise, nothing more, nothing less.
And in a way, net zero could mean that we'll start working 2 years just before the deadline you've given. But then the response of net zero from civil society in Bonn was net money on the table for loss and damage and adaptation. I think that's what we need, and that's what should be the outcome. There should be an agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh that loss and damage finance facility needs to be established, and within three years, we should have an operational entity in place.
Great. I have around 4 or 5 minutes. I have list of 8 main pointers being mentioned in the Glasgow Pact. Really, I would like you to give a score of each of the points. What do you feel about it? I'll just give set by set. Science and urgency to keep the temperature rise within 1.5 degrees centigrade. At a scale of 1 to 5, Sanjay, how much you will give?
5.
So 5 means worse. 5 means worse. 1 means good. Oh. I'm saying that action point of view. From Bonn, on action point of view, on science and urgency, how much number will give?
Okay, I would still give, considering the national actions, I would still give 3.
3, okay, 3. Adaptation.
Oh, it's again me, adaptation 2 to 3. 2
to 3.
2 to 3, yeah.
Okay. Adaptation finance. Sanjay, I just come in round it.
Adaptation fine 4. No money on the table, it's recycled.
Oh, 4 means 4. No, 4 means good. What I'm saying, 1 is the worst response, 5 is the best response.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Then I think...
So science and urgency, you are given 3.
No, science and urgency, I will give then 2 to 3.
2.
Yeah. Nobody's taking it seriously. Adaptation is also 2. Adaptation finance is also 2.
2. So all 2. And mitigation?
Mitigation, again 2. 3, 3 to 2.
2. So now, Suresh Saab, all these 4 points, science and urgency, how much you will give?
Maybe 1.5.
Oh, 1.5. Okay. And then adaptation?
Adaptation is, I think, is something which is forgotten. I won't go it beyond 1.5. The more focus is on mitigation in the developed world, but adaptation in developing countries, no one is talking about it. And even if you look at the pledges which are made for adaptation, the percentage of it, which would be the future commitments, the adaptation, it seems that developed world, they want to get adaptation removed from agenda. So 1.5.
Right. So 1.5. So even poorer than that. And adaptation finance?
1.
1. And mitigation? Bit more than that.
Mitigation between 2 and 3.
2 and 3. Okay. This 4 said, Doha bhai, science and urgency to start with?
Science and urgency is 1.
1. Okay. And then adaptation?
Adaptation could be 2.
2. Okay. Adaptation finance?
1.
Okay. And mitigation?
Mitigation 3.
3. So for the first 4 parameters, the average is around 1.5 to 2. All 3 of you taken together. So in a scale of 1 to 5, hardly 2. So 35 to 40% achievement. Great. Next step.
You didn't have loss and damage in your list.
I have. I'm coming to that. The next set.
He's coming in second round.
I'm going, Sanjay, I'm going strictly by the Glasgow Pact. The way it has been numbered there, I'm going by that only.
Okay.
So the technology transfer and all these things, number 5, how much you give? No discussion on that.
Me?
Technology transfer. Sanjay?
Are you asking me? Okay, 1.
Yes.
1.
1. Okay. Now loss and damage. I think now
Loss
you're
and
going to
damage
fraction.
0 or -1. They are using our own. Their money they're using money that is supposed to be given to developing countries to build their own to address their own loss and damage condition.
So they are basically working at the expense of the developing countries. Implementation.
I would put it 2. It is working at national level. All countries are working. Yeah.
And collaboration, the final one, the 8th.
Oh, collaboration is 1. Again, collaboration.
So basically that same scale, 1 to 2. Surendra sir, do you agree with that kind of scale, or you would like to give even more or even less?
Yeah, I think I'll just give a slightly higher ranking to collaboration among southern countries. Okay. So collaboration is now actually polarized. And within that collaboration, global collaboration, I agree with Sanjay, but then we have a collaboration among developing countries as well, collaboration with LDCs as well. And that is a front where I can see that we can put our political differences at the back burner, and we are able to work together. So I'll give it 3 collaboration among developing countries.
So that's
loss and damage finance facility proposal was one example. I agree with Abhay.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. I'll come to the last question, but Dua Sahab, what's your point on that? Do you agree on the other 2 panelists?
I more or less agree with both of them. I mean, Abid Bhai and also Sanjay Bhai. I mean, there is no big difference between
loss and damage 0 or -1, kind of.
Loss and damage kind of 0. It's not to give minus. I mean, okay, it's 0.
So basically, I just took an average of all of you, whatever said, and I found that out of the 8 points, it's basically between 1.5 to 2 in a scale of 5, maximum score.
Yeah.
So 30 to 35% achievement is the current scenario according to very 3 climate experts. You have been following it up for so many years. So that's not a very rosy situation.
No.
Now I'll just kind of would like to conclude with one question because of the fact that Surendra has raised it. That's collaboration. And let's start with him only. That the Asian countries, the South Asian countries are really one of the most impacted. They are the most impacted countries across the world. But do you find adequate collaboration? The geopolitics is really taking its toll on the collaboration, on climate collaboration in South Asia. Don't you think that the India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, they need to talk much quicker, much stronger, and much cohesive way to put it in the global platform? Surendra sir.
Yusuf, for me, a couple of years ago, when there was this locust attack, that is a prime example. When locust attack started, Pakistan, India, Nepal, all of these countries, Afghanistan, Iran, they actually acted in a collective manner, and they were able to control that menace. So similarly, the heat waves that South Asia faced this year, especially Delhi, Lahore, and other South Asian countries, there is a now growing realization that South Asia need to tackle this non-traditional security threat collectively, which would endanger the security of the whole region. So while we can still have our political differences on various things, on climate change, on these transboundary floods, on heat waves, there is now growing consensus, and I can see it increasing towards Sharm el-Sheikh.
Are you seeing it at the political level, Surendra Sahab? I think
listen, at political level as well. We have already observed what happened 2 days ago due to those floods in South Asia, in Nepal, in India, and part of Bangladesh. So the water, when it would start flowing in Indus plain, it won't stop at India only. It would come to Pakistan ultimately. And if we are not talking to each other, if we are not sticking to the early warning mechanisms and information sharing, it would be a collateral damage. And no country can afford collateral damage right now.
Dua bhai, this collaboration, how you feel that? I'm talking about the collaboration at the government level. Because end of the day, governments, the parties are going to the COP and talk in one language. The civil society, the track 2, track 3, they're already there. I'm talking about the government level. Do you see that collaboration happening?
In relation to government level, I didn't see very much collaboration is happening between the countries. And the collaboration that sometimes we refer, they're reactive, not proactive. For instance, in 2008, countries like Bangladesh and India, they agreed to establish food bank and they committed to provide food. This is reactive because at that time there was food crisis. Maybe during this time, after this flood, massive flood in India, Bangladesh, and also Pakistan, there might have some collaboration in terms of sharing information for early warning and also some prediction. But we need more proactive collaboration between countries, and this is not happening due to many reasons.
Not really.
And if we consider the other collaboration, because there are some issues which is essentially required for resilience building, because resilience is a not only national issue, but also regional issue. For instance, displacement and migration. For instance, transboundary water flows. For instance, flooding. So we need more collaboration from the state level to address those problems.
Not really happening.
Not really happening.
Not really. Sanjay, your take on that, and also how important this collaboration is during this ensuing COP. African countries are fighting among themselves, but when they're going to COP, there's an Africa group.
Yeah.
But we really don't have a South Asian group per se. So how you see this collaboration right now, and how you see it kind of manifesting during COP?
Yeah. Janta, since this is this show is for South Asian diaspora in Canada.
Absolutely.
I'm sure I'll give you an analogy. I'm sure most of them must have seen Lord of the Rings movie, where all hobbits, Rohirrims, everyone come together to fight Saruman forces. And I think climate change is a bigger threat than your own political differences. And countries need to come together to fight this non-traditional security. Otherwise, we can continue fighting among ourselves and we'll be more weaker. Well, the money for defense or and defending ourselves from each other should have gone into loss and damage and adaptation,
right. Absolutely.
rather than and rather than adding more carbon footprint through war machinery. So certainly, I agree with Doha Bhai and Avid Bhai that yes, South Asia, we need a regional adaptation plan like national. Right. We need a mitigation plan or low carbon development regionally, where there should be energy trade, and energy should be renewable energy. Solar, wind, tidal waves, this should be the energy. We can benefit each other by trading this energy and grow together and make ourselves more resilient. For COP 27, the countries are talking from their own subgroups. Bangladesh in LDCs, Nepal and Bangladesh and Bhutan in LDCs, India in like-minded group. Pakistan is also, I think, part of the like-minded group. Small island developing states, all these, Sri Lanka. So through that, they are, I think these countries, since they are part of the different sub-country groupings in G77, they should make efforts to keep G77 together. They can be the ambassador within those country groups to make sure G77 put its position together. Collectively, we can certainly, persuade and we can force and we can get much better climate deals from developed countries. Otherwise, divided, we will fall together.
Absolutely. I think very, very interesting discussion for about half an hour or so. Takeaways are very important. Yes, Bonn may not be fully blah, 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 but blah, blah, blah to an extent. And what I think Sureni Saab has said that the big countries should not kind of hide refuge, that they don't take refuge behind this net zero and other jargons. And as Doha Bhai also pointed out, that this whole India and Bangladesh having flood together and all these are happening together. And I really take on what Sanjay has finally said, is that we need a regional climate policy, a regional policy. So I think that's extremely important, and we'll keep on tracking it till the COP27. I request Sanjay, being kind of CANSA, South Asia aid, to push this regional climate action plan. This is extremely important, and maybe this is the best time to push that. With that note, we conclude today. We keep on talking with all of you and try to push it as far as possible. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's one thing to know about Canadians, is that when we work together, we can accomplish incredible things. Climate change is the biggest challenge facing humanity today, and Canadians have what it takes to meet the moment. What we do next is critical. The Emissions Reduction Plan is Canada's roadmap to meet its achievable greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. The Government of Canada is harnessing the ingenuity and the will of Canadians all across the country, not just to fight climate change, but to create sustainable jobs and build a strong economy for the future. Sector by sector, Canada's plan sets out the actions needed to cut pollution. Electric vehicles, renewable power, clean technologies, new businesses, and good, long-lasting jobs to meet the global demand for sustainable goods and services. Building a clean environment and a bright future for our kids and grandkids. Thousands of Canadians helped shape this plan. People of all ages, Indigenous peoples, businesses, communities, and all levels of government. This is your plan, and this is the Government of Canada's commitment to you. To fight climate change, to create good jobs, and to build a strong, vibrant future for everyone.